What is photogrammetry? So photogrammetry is a process of taking 2D images and merging them into a 3D model. There are multiple photogrammetry softwares. There are ones you can get on your phone, on desktop, on Mac, PC. The two biggest that I'm aware of are Reality Composer and Metashape, which is the one I'm going to be personally using. This video will be more focused on the shooting side of these 3D models. So the way photogrammetry works is it takes these 2D images, and similar to human vision, once it has two pictures that it can pair, it can create depth off of it, a lot like human depth perception. Let's go and hop in, and I'll go and show you guys my process of doing a scan. So now I have my turntable with my shoe on it. First thing I'm gonna wanna do is to get the area really well lit. So as strong of a light and as soft of a light works best. And I'm wanting as much light as possible so I can have the highest possible aperture when I'm shooting these photos and keep the most in focus. So I'm gonna set up the light here and I'll start walking you guys through that process. Okay, so here's what the lighting is currently looking like. I have it rigged out on a C-stand and basically top down on the shoe, which will do a great job of lighting that top portion. And this white turntable actually functions as a great bounce to fill in some of those shadows that would typically be on the sole. And over here is the main camera that's going to be shooting all the stills that we're going to use for the photogrammetry model. And I have it at a slightly downward position, angled up at the shoe, which is going to do a good job getting the detail and the depth of little portions like this in the shoe, where if I'd been shooting it from up here, maybe we wouldn't get that same perspective. Right now I'm at 1/50th of a second, f/22 and ISO 1000. f/22 is going to allow for that deep focus I've talked about on the shoe, just puts everything in focus and will allow for more points to be matched. And I'm currently on manual white balance, and I just put it daylight since I know this light's balanced at daylight temperature. And I'm shooting in RAW plus JPEG. From my experience, you're totally fine just to shoot in JPEG. Sometimes RAW, the workflow to have to run it through like Lightroom to process it as JPEG. I've gotten the best experience just throwing JPEGs straight from the camera, not processed through Lightroom. And I have my laptop over here, so once I finish doing one lap, then I can put it in and get a rough mock-up of where the scan's looking right now. And then if I'm seeing any areas on the shoe lacking coverage, then I can go back and reshoot it. Okay, cool. So let's get to the scan now. So first, here's a little example of the difference that being at 2.8 and f/22 makes. So here on the toe, you're seeing it really in focus, and let me take it to 2.8 here. And as you're seeing now, it is just wildly out of focus, and that means the software wouldn't have the opportunity to make any tracking points there on the toe because it would just be out of focus. But yeah, you can also do any of these scans outdoors, which can help in a lot of cases just because there's so much light. You don't have to be at f/22, but just have as deep as focus as you possibly can. We're gonna start it here on the first elevation, and this is where it gets pretty crazy. I just start snapping and I just do a total orbit. So now I'm gonna move the camera up a little bit and reposition it so our shoe is once again dead center in frame, and I'm gonna make sure I have sharp focus. Getting these different elevations is giving the software different angles to really stitch and determine what the depth of the object is. Now I'm gonna go for the highest elevation scan, and this will get us a lot of great detail around the edge of the shoe. Anytime when you're orbiting your object and it goes a little bit out of frame, there's no harm in repositioning the camera. now I finished all of my base scans. I now have my 3 elevations that I got, and now I look at the object and I try seeing spots that maybe were obscured on the initial scan. So maybe right here the laces maybe blocked it. I'll get close to the shoelaces as well just to get strong detail there. So now that we've finished our first pass of photos, I'm gonna plug it into my laptop here. And I always make a folder and I'll have the photos in one and then the control, which I put the Metashape project folder in. I'm gonna separate it by kind so I can find all the JPEGs. Okay, sweet. So I'm gonna make a folder inside of photos named top of shoe, because we're gonna do a secondary scan to then get the sole of the shoe. So we're gonna flip it to get all 6 faces of the object. Let's throw those in there. And we're just gonna pop over to Metashape now. And Metashape is organized, honestly, really simplistically. So you just go up here to this workflow banner and you just hit add folder. So look at the workflow banners like a checklist. So at the top of it, it's like, hey, like, what do you do first? What are you gonna do first? You're gonna go through and add your photos. So I picked my photos, gonna hit open, and it's gonna open in what's called a chunk. And this is basically like just a grouping. So picture this like one portion of your model. It's the equivalent of like a sequence in Premiere Pro if you're familiar with that software. With this chunk, I go workflow, align photos, and for this case, medium's gonna be more than enough. So we're just gonna hit okay here. Every once in a while, it'll give you the notification that some photos failed to align. Definitely not something to freak out about. Always better to shoot more photos and then the software picks which ones it does and doesn't want. I'm just gonna remove this camera, and now we're looking at what's called a point cloud. So imagine if you were writing on a piece of paper and someone told you to write your name, and instead of drawing it, you just did like little taps, like C, A, R. This is really what this is like. It's more like a rough blueprint so you can see, okay, did my photos align properly? And this tool is a great visualizer of how the software is working. So this is gonna show where the software predicted all of our cameras to be, and I can go here, see if there was one at the top of the shoe that was like registering at the bottom, then I'd wanna delete that camera, but it looks like everything aligned well. And here I'm just looking for any holes on the shoe, like any parts that I maybe didn't shoot with enough coverage. But yeah, it's not always this easy. Sometimes you have to go back and reshoot, but from what I'm seeing here, it looks like a pretty complete model. Now that we've determined that we had good coverage at the top of the shoe, we will flip the shoe over. I like tucking the laces up as much as possible just because we don't want those to end up getting in the way. Getting the shoe in the orientation that's gonna affect the fabric part of it the least amount is best, just because some of those can lead to like weird ghosting. Now I will realign the camera back down to that lowest angle to get that bottom perspective, and we'll go through and do the same process that we did on the top part of the shoe. Now that I've gotten my 3 base scans of this sole, I'm gonna go closer and get some more detail-oriented ones. Now that we have all of the scans of the top of the shoe, I'm gonna throw those over here as well, and we'll go through and render that point cloud. Let's now hop back over to Metashape, and we're gonna rename that first chunk to top of shoe. Okay, and we're gonna make a new chunk, and same thing as last time. We go up to add folder. I'm gonna find the bottom of shoe folder. We're gonna just click through, make sure everything looks good. Looks great. And we're gonna name this one, pretty self-explanatory, bottom of shoe. Sweet, and I'm gonna hit align on that, and we're just gonna wait for this to render out. Okay, perfect. Now we have the bottom of the shoe all rendered. Let's double check here again, and honestly, right off the start, I think this might be perfect. Just again, going around the shoe, making sure there's good detail, and really at the bottom, it doesn't matter. I'm really just focused on the top of the sole since we already got the top of the shoe all scanned. Yeah, that looks good. This wraps up part 1 of the video. In part 2, I'll go more in depth on the process of actually editing and post-processing all of these models and stitching the 2 halves of it together. To end the video, I'll leave you with a little preview of what creating the model looks like, and don't hesitate if you have any questions to leave them in the comment, and part 2 of the video will be linked up in the card.